Welcome in again to another edition of Musings from the Mountains. We're going to take your questions. Question and answer time. I just made my own song. I feel like
time of the week.
Yeah, it's that time of the week. You ready? You ready? You ready? I'm ready.
Yeah,
well, I'm Keenan Cummings, managing editor for the site. I feel like you should probably know that if you're watching for the first time. If you're not, welcome back.
And I'm Kotnik, staff writer for the site.
Like to have fun here. I like to have fun. Let's go.
You ready?
Yep, let's go.
All right.
We'll answer your questions.
Jump right to it. Concerned about offensive line next season, as most are, besides Jacob Gamble, in parentheses, that works out. What are some other options for immediate help next season?
Well, that's going to be something that likely is addressed in the portal. You know, that mystical thing that people step into and go to different schools. A lot of that's going to clear itself up, you know, after the end of the semester, after spring practice. So there will be help. They will be able to get some guys. They might even run into a late JUCO they like, maybe a late high school kid. But when it comes to immediate help, you almost have to look at a guy that's going to be able to play immediately. It's kind of a grad transfer type situation, but you'd like ideally to have him in for spring practice, but that's going to be tough. So get him in May, see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about how important the offseason is, and for West Virginia, it's going to be even more tougher for this offensive line, considering you have to replace Colt McKivitz and Kelby Wickland, the two tackles. Next question here in the ever so entertaining world of recruiting. Any surprises at the final signing day in February?
It's hard to say right now. I mean, that would be looking ahead quite a bit. They're going to have official visits start up after the dead period ends. That'll be that January 17th weekend. That'll be the first weekend for official visits. I think LaDamian Webb is probably going to visit the 24th, the running back from Mississippi that everybody on the Blue Light's excited about. So we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if West Virginia holds back a scholarship or two. They've got 3, 4 if you count Gamble scholarships remaining. I would be kind of shocked if they used all 4. I think you'll maybe see them sign 1 or 2 guys in February, play the rest in the long game as you saw last year with late additions in the spring, summer, or fall.
So changing the subject to special teams, West Virginia obviously had Josh Groudon as their punter this past year, Australian guy, a former LSU Tiger. But are there any other Aussie punters coming down the pipe?
Yeah, that's a football factory. Pro Kick Australia, the stuff they do out there is incredible. They're sending guys everywhere. The positive with Josh Groudon is he kind of saved that relationship for West Virginia. You know, they had swung and missed twice. Last time I checked, 3 strikes, you're out. Well, they had a home run with Josh Groudon. So getting him in, I think, saves that. I asked Neil this question, not necessarily about Australian punters, but about punting in general, because I was concerned right at the end of the season how they were going to approach it. They're not going to scholarship a guy until at least the spring. They're going to look at what they got on the roster, give those guys spring practice, 15 practices, kind of show what they can do, and then make a decision. So could it be another Australian punter? Could it be a graduate transfer punter? Could it be a JUCO punter? Sure, if it doesn't work out. But he's going to give the in-house options a chance to earn that job.
So going back to recruiting here, any new high-powered high schools that West Virginia may have made inroads with in this last recruiting cycle?
All of them? Is that fair to say? I mean, all of them. I mean, that's your job in recruiting. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that's overblown. I mean, you build relationships over time, but just because you get a player from one high school doesn't mean you're going to get a player there again. I mean, you saw that with Miramar over the years. Everybody thought because West Virginia got a couple players from there that every good player from Miramar was going to go to West Virginia. It just doesn't work that way. What you do is you build relationships over time with coaches, with people around the programs. That opens the door. And then it's about you yourself trying to close things. I think obviously it helps that West Virginia got into some good schools. They got into DeMatha. You know, in this recruiting class, they were able to get into Clearwater Academy, which is really bubbling with talent. That's where they got Akeem Mesidor from. So anytime you pull players, it's a positive, and that stuff builds over time.
Any late players WVU can
flip at this stage, maybe, but a lot of those guys, if you don't sign in December, a lot of coaching staffs treat it basically like you aren't committed. So it's all, unless you're really, really good and you hold the cards, which this is the thing in recruiting, guys, you have to realize. If you're good enough and you're the player, you always hold the cards. But it goes in tiers. Every tier you are further down from being the guy, it's harder and harder to kind of dictate things. The coaches more control the process than you do. So if you're really, really good, yeah, they could maybe flip a guy. But most of these guys that they're in on are guys that probably either A, aren't committed already, or B, have already backed off their commitments.
So it was interesting too what we talked about with Neil Brown about winners, about whether or not, because a lot in this recruiting class, you do have a lot of guys that won state championships. There's one that won a JUCO national title. I thought it was interesting. I just wanted to point out that if they're down between two guys, and they're always going to take the most talented guy. But if you're down between two, and the guy is from a winning program, he knows what it takes to win. That that might give him the edge in that process.
So between me and you, they're taking me.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
that's nice.
As long as we're clear.
Next question here is the prevailing thought still that the number of transfers has remained static before and after the opening of the transfer portal?
Shane Lyons has pretty much said that at West Virginia it's the same. I think the thing about the transfer portal that it has people freaking out and running, and that meme with the dog sitting in the house that's on fire, is the fact it's fine. But I think what has people doing that is just how public this is, and I mean this in this way. When guys used to transfer, there was the rumors, and is this guy going to transfer? He might change his mind 5 or 6 times. Go meet with the coach. He decides to stay. Now, you don't have all that. If a guy wants to transfer, he contacts compliance. Within 48 hours, he's in the transfer portal. So everything's just so much more streamlined. There's no doubt now. If a guy's in the transfer portal, you know he's looking to transfer. Maybe he doesn't, but at least he's looking at it. In the past, there was a lot of that wishy-washy, moving back and forth type deal, and there really was no real way to track a guy was transferring unless he really just said it, publicly said, I'm transferring, or put it on social media. Now, the transfer portal kind of guides the way.
And as always, I always like to point out, just because someone's in the portal doesn't always mean they're going to transfer as well. So, it just gives them the the luxury of being able to contact coaches and all that. But it doesn't automatically mean they're going to transfer for sure. But staying on topic of the transfer portal, will the rules committee get involved with the transfer portal, change the way it's done?
The whole thing is designed to streamline this process for student athletes, and I think that's what it's done. Where the changes are coming, I don't think changes need to be made to the transfer portal. Guys, all it is a database of names. You inform compliance, they put your name in it. That's all it is. There's no vortex or anything else. It is what it is. It's just a database of names. No different than going through the Rivals.com recruiting list. That's what it is. Where the changes need to come, this is where the transfer portal has become a problem, especially with roster management, is the rules that govern scholarship numbers right now. Yeah. You're only allowed a hard cap of 25 each year, which, if you take 22, you can take 28 the next year, but it's 25 each year. It's got to add up to that. So right now, any guy that leaves, you don't get a scholarship back. You do not get your scholarship back towards that 25 hard cap count. So
they don't have to bring him back either.
Yeah, you have to find a way to keep your roster together with guys leaving, and any transfer you take counts toward that number. So it's hard to keep your roster together. That's the biggest thing with the transfer portal right now, and that's why I think you're going to see them adjust some of these rules here in the next couple years, because this isn't something that's just affecting West Virginia. It's all of college football.
Now, one more question regarding the transfer portal. Do schools tell certain players they should enter the portal? Do teams use the portal as some kind of trading system for players?
I don't know that, but I think you tell someone to enter the portal without really telling them when they're not playing.
It's kind of like them reading the writing on the wall.
Yeah, when they're not playing, or maybe they aren't getting what they thought they would get when they signed with a certain school, and maybe they thought they were going to play early. Maybe it's year 3 and they haven't saw the field. That kind of stuff clears itself up kind of naturally in a sense. And now with trading, I don't think it is sort of like a free agency in a sense, but more with graduate transfers, because those guys can kind of come and go wherever they want. But everybody else kind of has to play by the rules. You're going to set out a year unless you can get an eligibility waiver, but we've all seen how those are. Very hit or miss.
All right, Keenan, let's exit the transfer portal right here for this one. Any new information on the coaching search?
No, I really have not heard much at this point. I think it's
wide receivers.
Yeah, West Virginia needs to replace Xavier Dye. But of course, let me preface this with I have been quite sick. My whole family has been quarantined over the holidays, but that should start to clear itself up here in a little bit, especially with the coaches convention coming. If a guy isn't in place by then, I wouldn't be surprised to see in-house options looked at. But usually with these coaching searches, you look one of 3 ways: either an in-house guy, a guy with ties, or a wild card. Xavier Dye was sort of a wild card in a sense, so it wouldn't shock me if they go that route. But I think they've got to kind of find a guy that's going to balance. They need a guy that's a good coach, but also a dynamic recruiter, which you see across the staff. That's pretty much a trademark of most Neil Brown hires.
All right, going to basketball now. What are you hearing, if anything, about the development of Jalen Bridges? Anything?
I really haven't heard much, but I haven't asked either. I talked to him. I actually talked to him, what was it, right after the Gold Blue debut, I believe.
Either that or the
Duquesne. His whole focus this entire year is just about adding weight and getting in better shape. That's why he took this redshirt year. He wants to physically be to the point where he thinks he can compete at the highest level, and that's his focus all year. From what I have heard, bits and pieces, he's been impressive. He's very athletic, pretty much what he was built, an athletic wing that is going to create some mismatch problems once he fills out his body.
All right, now West Virginia will be facing number 3 Kansas Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN Plus. This question, the second to last question, deals with that subject. Do you think the ESPN Plus deal will have a positive or negative impact, or no difference whatsoever, on recruiting?
I think that's way overblown. That's something I've heard a lot of concern about. And is it really concern about recruiting, or is it concern that you have to pay $4.99 to?
It's not going to be the determining factor.
No, I think that now if every single Big 12 game, on conference, all of them were on that service, I think you start to get a little concerned. There's 3 for West Virginia in football or basketball, or was 1 in football, and I think it's a matter of over time that's going to sort itself out. And I think this is just the start. I don't think this is going to be a Big 12 only thing. I think other conferences are going to do things that are similar. And the one thing I do think this is a plus for West Virginia, I guess if you can look at one positive for this, this could actually show, future people that are looking at this data, how avid the West Virginia fan base is, not just looking at arbitrary media markets to judge, what you're doing. Now, I'm old school. I'll be the first person to admit I'm not a streaming guy, man. I like the old school, just watching it on TV, but hey, it's 2020. This is what people are doing now. You got to wake up, or I'll be just yelling at you. Get off my lawn here soon.
Final question here, off topic. Give a strong take on a local restaurant. Strong take is in all caps.
You want to go first? Do you have anything?
I'll give the floor to you. I'm curious what you say.
Give the floor to me. This is tough. Now, when you say local, does it have to be like just a Morgantown area restaurant, or could it be a local chain restaurant?
I didn't specify, so I mean, could be either or, both.
I already get beat up so much about my food takes.
Yeah, coming from the guy who doesn't like tacos.
I don't, but I'll say it. I think Kegler's wings are overrated. I like their other stuff better than their wings.
Like, what else do you like, Bill?
The waffle fries. The drunken waffle fries are good. I like their shrimp.
Their gold
wings
are really good.
I'd rather go other places.
I think Crockett's is pretty underrated. I'll say that. Crockett's pretty underrated. I really like their wings. Alamo Ranch is pretty good.
Mario's Cowboy Ranch for life.
I will agree with that. That's one of the best wing sauces I have ever had.
Yes, for life.
Pizza House.
No, it's not. But that's beside the fact.
That's it. That's all the questions.
I hope you like our controversial food takes. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a fun one. But tune in again. If this is first time watching, hit subscribe. We do this pretty often. We're back from the holidays and ready to go. Thanks again to Tyson behind the camera. Always does great work. If you haven't checked it out, if this is your first time watching our show, go back and watch a few more. Watch some of his stuff. He does great work. But thanks for tuning in. It's been another edition of Musings from the Mountains.